Told you guys I was OCD about stuff. I got this stuff freaking clean as hell. Hey guys, welcome back to the second part of the water pump and timing belt video for this IS300 Sport Cross project of mine. If you saw in my last video, I actually disassembled everything on the front of the engine. Got all the nasty, dirty, greasy parts off the front of the engine. Now I'm gonna go ahead and clean it all up, degrease everything, clean up all the parts, and then put it all back together, get the water pump in, get the seals in, and all that, and I'll go through all the details and how to do all that in this video, so stay tuned. So here's the mid part of the intake manifold, the throttle body right there. So I've got to clean all this stuff up, just the OCD in me. So I put some of these rusted bolts in my tumbler with the blue tumbler media overnight just to get all the rust off of them. And then I put them in this ultrasonic cleaner just to wash them off when it's done. So most of the bolts got pretty clean after that. The ones that were majorly rusted are still kind of rusted and corroded, so I'll probably end up replacing those. Told you guys I was OCD about stuff. I got this stuff freaking clean as hell. Look at how brand spanking new, like almost like it came from the factory, how shiny it is now. I used my solvent-based degreaser, the heavy-duty solvent-based degreaser, sprayed it on there, let it sit for a little bit, wiped it down and sprayed it off with water, looking fresh. The throttle body housing is a little bit oxidized. I'm going to just hit that with a Scotch-Brite before I put it back on and get it a little bit shinier than that. Overall, everything's pretty dang clean now. So I was cleaning up the pulley and everything, and I noticed some corrosion on the backside, so I hit it with the wire wheel on the drill. I just used one of these little wire wheels on the drill, just cleaned up the corrosion a little bit, and I'm going to just hit it with some spray paint, some black spray paint, just to seal the bare metal in so it doesn't corrode anymore. Same with the front pulley. I'm just going to hit it with a coat of paint just to make it look pretty again. Now that I got everything taken apart up at the bottom and cleaned up on this car, I'm going to go ahead and take apart the cam gears. So I'm going to just shoot this one off with an impact wrench. There's that little hex right here that you hold on to with the wrench, so that's where you do it. On this side, I don't have a 14mm hex. I have to rig a bolt and a wrench and try to take it off, but this thing's not on that tight, so it shouldn't be a problem. And once we get that off, we get to the nut behind here that should be something like this. Man, so without having the proper 14mm tool, I had to rig this little bolt and nut combo thing here, which was a pain in the ass to actually get some leverage on. And when I was holding that and I got that thing popped, it kind of slipped. So I kind of lost track of where I was. So I had to look at, luckily I took some pictures. So you want to make sure that the where it says number 1 and number 2, that they're kind of like 45 degrees towards each other. So this thing's off a little bit right now. So I just got to turn it and make sure it matches the picture I took. And then that way I could line up the front. Because remember, this VVT-i cam gear, it has adjustment in either direction. So just lining up that mark doesn't mean anything without lining up the actual cam. So you just gotta make sure you take a picture of your cam before and after. Let's see if this works. I had to rig this little thing for some leverage. That way I could put all my weight on here, and also have to make sure everything's nice to see. I think I've destroyed this nut. I have to go run down to Toyota and get another one. this. Oh yeah. Oh, motherfucker. So after getting that bolt off, that thing was a pain, but luckily I rigged that thing up and I was able to pop it with that torque. So now you want to take the cam caps off. So you got the two 10 millimeters on the regular cam. Over here on the VVT-i, you got two 10s and then two hexes back here that you got to take out. Right back there. You got to undo the filter right here. I did undo this for a second, but I don't think this needs to come out because this is all one assembly that can just come out in one piece. I think this is a solenoid here, so you just got to get this one, which I think is a 19. Take the caps off, clean up all the old form in place gasket, clean everything up, wipe all the oil away, and put in the new one. So we got those cam caps off. So you can see the old form in place gasket that came from the factory here. There's still a little piece left here. I gotta clean all this out. Got degrease everything up here, get it all nice and clean so I can put it all back together. Especially up here where you have to put the new form in place gasket up there also. So you gotta make sure that it's clean and dry and the new one will adhere. If we go down here, we'll look at the actual, on this side of it, you gotta clean everything up too because it's got little remnants of the form in place gasket, and then I'm just gonna degrease and clean everything with some brake parts cleaner over here. Same with this cam cap, it's still got all that junk from when they did the valve cover with it when they didn't need to. These seals are freaking old and brittle and solid as hell. This is probably the prime culprit for all the oil leaking in this car. I just put the cam gears and all the parts there. I'm gonna have to clean that cover and all that too, as well as rebuild that thing. And I'll have a separate video to showing how to rebuild this. So we got the cam caps all reinstalled with the form in place gasket. We put the panel back on, we put the sprockets in. So we got to torque these babies to 60 foot-pounds now, both of these bolts. And then the cover plate over here I think is only like 11 foot-pounds. So that's pretty easy. One of the things when you're like, especially if you rebuilt this cam gear with the seal, is when you put it in, you got to make sure it moves, I think 30 degrees either direction. And at first it won't move because like if you have it empty of oil, it needs to have oil inside of it so the gears can move. So I had to put a little bit of oil in there just to fill it up a little bit so it would move, but it does move, so I'm going to bolt it down now that I verify that it can move. So I'm about to pull the seal now. I don't have a seal puller with me because the seal puller is designed to not scratch the shaft. What I'm going to do is, I saw a rig on YouTube where a guy just drilled 2 little holes and put a wood screw in there, just enough to grab the seal, and then he used the pulley to pull it out. So I'm going to try that method. And I got to remember to take this seal out for the water pump here and put in the new one also. So I'm going to drill this hole and then try to get a screw in here. You got to drill it right at the center and try to get the metal part of the seal. Make sure it doesn't slip and hit any of the walls. Looks good. Didn't really score anything, so we got the old seal here, which was the F seal, and then we got the new seal, which has got the E seal. It's the same numbers. BH4513F is the old seal, and then the E is the new seal. The E is the one that the Supra guys had researched. It had like a better notches or something inside here that sealed better, and it was slightly thicker, and it had like these little rib things in the back that made it a little taller. This is actually a better, more upgraded seal. I'm gonna do what I did like at the top seal. I'm gonna pack it with some moly grease, so when I assemble it, it has something to ride on. I got this little hack here. I used the back of a cock, which is the same. I don't have a piece of PVC big enough. It's about the same size. Then I'm gonna just use the old seal. I'm gonna put the old seal over and then tap the old seal, use that as a cushion and tap it in. So that little cone thing didn't work too well. Got most of it is I'm using a punch, which is probably not a good method, but it's the only thing I have at the moment. So I'm just putting my punch basically here, and I'm using this as a cushion for the ring. And I'm just tapping it slowly around just to get it fully seated. So just slowly go around and just give it a couple light taps. After that, just check, make sure it's recessed pretty well, and it looks like it is, and you call it a day right there. So a little trick to make sure that you get everything in time right. Before I took out the old one, I had marked the 2 spots up top between the timing marks on the cam gear. Then I also marked 2 spots at the bottom on the little sprocket. So what I did was on the new belt, I marked the same exact spots. I counted one direction, I counted the other direction, and then I counted in between, made sure everything matched with all the numbers I counted up. And now I'm gonna put it back on and just line up all those marks I had previously put on. That engine O-ring gasket is the freaking worst ever because you gotta make sure it sits in there properly when you're putting the water pump on and it doesn't fall out while you're tightening down the bolts. And then also you'll notice when you take the bolts out, you'll have two that have these little thicker necks, and these are your alignment ones for the two opposite ends of the water pump into the block to kind of align it and get it perfect. And then the other four are straight through and they have a lot more wiggle in them, so those are for the four in the middle. And then don't forget the water pipe or the heater pipe in the back. You gotta line that in before you bolt everything down. So torque the housing down to 15 foot-pounds, the 6 bolt. And you notice I went ahead of myself and I did the timing belt first when I forgot the water pump. So I had to actually loosen that idler pulley again because that was in the way of this last bolt. Torque it in a cross pattern, 15 foot-pounds. Man, those 2 bolts back there for the heater hose is a pain to reach, especially if you have big hands. So luckily I don't. I just noticed that, this is a Toyota water pump or OEM water pump because right here is where it says Toyota and they actually shaved it off right there. It still says Aisin over here, but they shaved the Toyota off right there. I didn't even notice it before. But definitely an OEM Toyota part. So we got everything back together, alternator, water pump, the bracket for the power steering all torqued down. I think the power steering bracket and the alternator brackets and the bolts are 68 foot-pounds. So I torqued those down. I put these on, I hand tighten, or really just ratchet tighten because they're 10 millimeters, so they're only like 9 foot-pounds. So usually 10 millimeters I'd never torque, do those by hand. The water pump, those are 15 foot-pounds. So pretty much everything I torqued down properly, doing it like the factory manual says. And I'll put a link down in the description to my IS forum where I learned from there. And there's a couple of factory service manuals that I'm actually following right now over here. And I'll post that. So next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to release the tensioner, let everything kind of set. And then I'm going to do 2 full rotations from top dead center to make sure that everything's lined up and everything settles correctly. So I went ahead and did more than 2 full rotations. I turned it over so I could get the markings back. So everything looks good because it looks like I did it, all the way around, and my old markings for my time, they've kind of shifted. Initially they shifted 1 tooth, then they shifted 2 teeth, and they did it over here correspondingly. So everything looks good as far as time goes. Everything matches up, like the timing mark here matches the timing mark there, matches the 0 degrees down here. So everything, it looks pretty good, so I could start reassembling everything. To try to torque the crank pulley back to spec, what I'm going to do the same thing I did earlier using the belt friction when I was taking off. I was able to break that nut off just using that friction from the drive belt. So I'm going to grab the old drive belt, loop it through, and try to do the same process I did last time, going to reverse. Man, man, that drive belt trick worked like a charm. So what I ended up doing, I did it kind of the reverse of putting trying to break it off earlier. So I just looped it through. You skip the water pump pulley and you just go down to the alternator, and you kind of wrap it around itself right here, you can see, and then the teeth catch onto the teeth over there, and then the friction from that just kind of rolls onto itself. And I was able to torque that to 150 foot-pounds. The spec on this is 243 foot-pounds. Most non-professionals don't have a 300 torque wrench laying around. It's usually an impact on. For good measure, I put the breaker bar on, and I turned it with a breaker bar too, just to make sure. So I'm comparing the new drive belt to the old drive belt. So this car's got 195,000 miles. They've got the original Toyota drive belt in here, and it shows its age. I mean, this thing is worn out. It's about to snap. But it looks like all the old services they did on here, they never replaced it. It still says Toyota right there. It's made by Mitsuboshi, obviously, so it still says Mitsuboshi on it. And the new one is Mitsuboshi. So they sent me a 6PK 1940. This car spec'd for a 1930. I measured both of these and they're the exact same length, so I don't know if it matters or what the difference between a 1930 and a 1940 is. I know a 1940 is more spec'd for like the SC300 and the Supras, where the Lexus IS300 and some of the other Lexuses use the 1930, so I don't know what the difference is, but they're the exact same length. I already measured it, I pulled on it, and it's the same diameter. So anyway, I'll go ahead and install this now. So I pretty much got everything back. I put in those new silicone hoses that I bought. One over here also. These silicone hoses attract a lot of dust and dirt. I gotta wipe them down before I put everything back together. I think I did some little ones back there. I had some leftover blue silicone from one of my other projects, so I ended up using that because I didn't want to buy it. These things are expensive. I mean, it's like $1.50 a foot, so you have to buy like 10 foot at a time, so that's 15 bucks each. Man, but it's a lot cheaper than the factory. I mean, like a factory piece like this costs like $45. That one's like probably like $35. I'm like, screw that. This was broken when I first got this open, so I made a little bracket out of metal so it fits perfectly. I replaced some of the tape over here on the loom. I redid some tie straps and all that to get those things all put together. But pretty much everything's back to the way it is. I just got to put the radiator back, fill it up. I'm going to do a flush with distilled water first go around. I'm going to drain that distilled water just to get rid of all the sediment and crap inside the block, and then I'm going to fill it up with the antifreeze and some more distilled water when I'm done. Got everything pretty buttoned up down here as far as wire management goes, and along the way off camera I've been wiping up everything that's kind of a mess in here and cleaning as I go. Tune in, I'm going to do a dress-up kit bolt replacement for all the bolts in this engine bay just to make it look pretty. I already got that stuff. Stay tuned for a future video on that one. All right, after about a week or so of this being taken apart, let's see if this starts up and if I have any leaks putting everything back together. So far so good. I'll let this baby warm up and take it for a test drive. So I let it warm up and test drove it and ran into some issues. First of all, those cheap ass vacuum hoses I use they're too thin and soft, and they actually collapse during vacuum, so I have to go get some real ones for those and take those out, because I noticed my brake booster stopped working and then realized those things were all sucked up when I was looking at idle. Then I was getting a code P139 for something with the VVT-i, so I think this thing might be going because I replaced the filter here, and usually that's the culprit because it's not getting any flow. But maybe this thing's been leaking for so long that now that I put the new filter in and everything, so I might have to take this apart and diagnose it. That's most likely the problem. This guy might be bad, so I'll go see what's wrong with that. I'll take that out because it's only a 110mm bolt. I'll do that in a separate video. I also was getting a cam position sensor issue, but I think that was initially maybe the VVT-i was just kicking in after I took everything apart, so I cleared that code and it didn't come back. Hey guys, thanks for watching all the way to the end of this video on doing the timing belt, water pump, and seal service on the IS300 2JZ motor. This is probably the same process for the GS300, the Supra, and all the other cars that kind of use the 2JZ motor or the same normally aspirated motor. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up if you found it useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content on this car and my other car and anything else I'm doing with car related on this channel. Anyways, thanks for watching all the way to the end of this video, and I'll see you guys next time.